What is the Department of Labor doing to address workers' exploitation? Does the department uphold the International Labour Organization's policies? What measures are set in place to ensure that employers comply with labor laws? Would it be lawful to put stricter measures to limit the length of a strike? What time is it? It's question time. Welcome to the show. My name is Mpotsedu. Issues pertaining to workers and their rights remain a key challenge to government and business. South Africa's longest and most expensive platinum sector strike has opened a lot of debate around strikes and their effect on the economy. With the main casual factor being the demand for a living wage, Labour Minister Mildred Oliphant has announced upwardly adjusted annual wages for domestic workers. This is a commitment to protect workers in sectors where work organizations and trade unions are absent, therefore making thousands of these workers vulnerable to abuse and exploitation. My guest today in the studio is Minister of Department of Labour, Mildred Oliphant, and joining us from our PE or Port Elizabeth studios is Vic van Vuuren. He's the director at the International Labour Organizations. But before we go into the show, let's look at this insert.
Countries around the world are in a race against time to meet the United Nations 2015 Millennium Development Goals. The International Labour Organization's development framework beyond 2015 encompasses the transformation of economies for quality growth and jobs. The Millennium Development Goal number 8 proposes to promote sustained, inclusive, and sustainable economic growth, full and productive employment, and decent work for all. South Africa's recently promulgated Labour Relations Amendment Act 6 of 2014 seeks to promote collective bargaining and employee participation, as well as regulating the right to strike. The recent platinum sector strike remains a bone of contention.
Why, when the workers has to be paid, the issue of the economy is becoming a first item in the agenda. But when these CEOs are paid 21 million per annum with 4 different bonuses that they get every year is not an issue.
The advantage for unions is that it's a mobilizing tool, and the advantage to employers is to show that the workers are determined to win their demands and they are deadly serious. So it's a vote that should indicate certain things to employers as well as to workers as well.
We know that CPI, as we know it, we talk about, it does not address transport cost, which is a huge cost of members going to work. We need to address issues of food cost, which the CPI takes average of those serious challenges that workers continue to be confronted with.
While workers affiliated to trade unions are protected, there are many of those who do not enjoy basic labor rights. In alliance with ILO's 2011 Convention concerning decent work for domestic workers, the Department of Labour's Sexual Determination for Domestic Workers is a commitment to protect these workers from untold abuse some suffer at the hands of their employers. But are all other vulnerable workers being catered for?
Minister, welcome to the show, and Vic, I also welcome you. Now, Minister, 20 years into democracy, we're still talking about exploitation of workers. How do you feel?
I must say I'm not feeling well at all about that situation. And that is why we're trying to intervene as the government, particularly when you look at the sectoral determination of domestic workers, farm workers, and also taxi industry, construction and cleaning. So that is why we're saying, let the people of this country, particularly the employers, appreciate that the workers are giving production and they are cleaning their areas, and therefore they must pay them accordingly. But also let me explain what do we mean by the sectoral determination. We just set a standard to say that workers are not supposed to be paid less than that particular amount. For example, when we talk about domestic workers in category A, those are big towns, your metros. We are saying those workers who are working more than 27 hours a week must be paid 2,065 rands a month. That is the intervention. We're not saying that should be the salary. But unfortunately in South Africa, you find that people, when you say this is the sectoral determination, they will think that we are saying let the workers be paid that amount, while we are saying they must not be paid less than that amount. So those are the challenges that we're still having in South Africa. And also we must understand where do we come from, because most of the vulnerable workers is very difficult to organize where they're working, particularly when you look at the domestic workers and farm workers. That's why we have those sectoral determination as part of our intervention as the government. But I must also say that the domestic workers as well now have a protection, particularly because we're saying let the employers register them under the unemployment insurance.
But they are not, Minister. Employers are not registering their domestic workers, and domestic workers are not complaining because they know they can be replaced the following day.
Now, what we have told the domestic workers, we've been doing Izimbizo around the country. There are only two provinces that are left. It's Limpopo and Mpumalanga. We have indicated to the domestic workers that they must report to us. We've given them the number that they can call, and nobody will know who has called us, so that we can be able to communicate directly with the employers. And also, through our inspection, we've taken a decision together with the organized labor, in particular the three federations, that we need to do the inspection on house to house so that we can be able to make sure that the domestic workers are registered.
Okay. Mr. Van Vuren, let me bring you in here. The ILO, how do you rate South Africa?
Well, South Africa is one of the countries that's ratified the core conventions of the ILO, which deals with things like discrimination, collective bargaining, social dialogue. And so South Africa rates very highly in terms of complying with international standards. Also, the laws that we have and the manner in which we deal with the right to strike is also in compliance with international standards. So if you want to look at it on a scale, South Africa is doing very well in those areas.
But let's talk about the practicalities. Policies is one thing. You can have, you have one of the best constitutions in the world, but is it being adhered to? Not fully. Now, you're saying they have the policies and all sorts of laws, but are they being put into effect?
I think the biggest challenge in South Africa is the implementation of our existing laws. There's no need to tighten the laws any further. It's a matter of implementing what we've got. And we cannot just keep looking at government to implement that through labour inspection. We need to turn to the employers. They play a key role in how they deal with social dialogue and maintaining standards, particularly in the vulnerable sector. And like the Minister said about domestic workers, it's not an easy area to police given the geographic location of domestic workers. So it's an education process on the one hand, but just like we deal with tax on the other side, we need to start prosecuting people who are not complying with minimum wages. Then we might see that there will be a general improvement in the payment and the working conditions of the vulnerable sectors like farm workers, domestic workers, the security sector, and the construction sector.
Okay, hold that thought there. I want us to take a quick break. When we return, let's look at the Labour Relations Act and the face or level at which it is today. This is Question Time. Please don't go away.
Arrested in connection with the murder of Senzo Meyiwa is planning to take legal action against the police minister.
Mbata appeared in the Boksburg Magistrates Court after being in police custody for 10 days.
He says police have ruined his life.
I'm afraid for my life.
His family have conflicting emotions and saddened that he was arrested in the first place.
And now their case seems to be in tatters, perhaps underlining the severe pressure they were under to produce a suspect. But what now for the police?
Primetime News, daily at 6 p.m. on SABC News. Zoom into Africa. This is South Africa. The president is Mr. Jacob Zuma. South Africa became a republic in 1960 and attained democracy in 1994. The population is more than 50 million people. One of South Africa's major languages is English. Monetary unit, the rand.
SABC, sharing 20 years of inspiration.
Welcome back. You're still watching Question Time. I guess today in studio I have the Minister of Labour, Mayor Mildred Oliphant, and joining us from our Port Elizabeth studios is Vic van Vieren. He's the Director at the International Labour Organization. Minister, the Labour Relations Act, at what stage is it in terms of the promulgation?
The President has just signed the regulations last week.
Yeah.
And it's going to be start operating in January next year. And I must say we have achieved what we thought it will support the vulnerable workers in particular.
Okay.
When it comes to the exploitation by the labor brokers, as we were well aware. Now, what we have said in terms of the labor relations, we have said everybody who claims to be an employer must employ any person in terms of the Labour Relations Act, the Basic Conditions of Employment Act, and also the Employment Equity.
Okay.
And what we were saying was that, because what we found was that the labour brokers were making the workers casuals. There are some of them who have been casuals for more than 20 years.
Yes.
And we're saying, let those labour brokers who supply the companies with the human resources to supply them, but immediately those employers must register those people. And they must be paid what the other workers who are doing the same work equally. So that is through employment equity. And we are saying even when a person is on a contract basis, but that person must be paid in terms of what the other worker in the same job is being paid. So we have dealt with that exploitation, and all the workers are covered. And we have also included those workers who are on training practically, to say those workers should be also covered. For example, if you've been trained, whether as a doctor, and then you are doing practical work, or engineer, you are doing the practical work, you must be protected by being registered under the unemployment insurance, including the compensation, so that whenever those people are also injured, they must be compensated. And at the same time, we are busy amending the Compensation Act to include the domestic workers, because some of them, they get injured when they are when the floor is slippery, but the employers are not really taking care of them. So we're saying let the domestic workers as well to be included, because they must be treated as workers as well. So those are the things that we're doing as the government.
Mr. van Vieren, are these challenges only faced by South Africa, or is this, I wouldn't even want to use the word norm, but is this something that is happening internationally as well?
Well, what you find is in the first world countries, the developed economies, you find that they've got a social security network that tends to play a bigger help in dealing with these vulnerable sectors. So in the emerging economies like South Africa, Mexico, some of the Asian countries, you find that they're dealing with exactly the same challenges as South Africa. The whole minimum wage debate, the whole vulnerable sector debate, and also we mustn't forget the wage gap. And we're at the wrong end of the scale with the wage gap, where our top earners are earning way above the norm when compared to our counterparts. So we've got some big challenges, but no, it's not linked only to South Africa.
Has it been proven what you're saying, that there's this huge gap? Because, I mean, I do a lot of discussions here, and believe me, South Africa is always put, in a very bad light. Everything that we are supposed to be associated with, it is said we are the West. Crime, we are the West. Rape, we are the West. Child abuse, we are the West. Now you're saying we also have one other worst. Has it been proven scientifically?
Yes, it has. The Gini coefficient in South Africa, I think, is between 0.6 and 0.7, which at the moment is the highest in the world. And unless we can reduce that, we're going to have a continual challenge between the lowest wage earners and the highest wage earners. If you look at the figures that were recently produced, the average of the top 50 earners in South Africa are earning 50 million rand a year. And as the Minister indicated, our lowest wage earners are here 1,800 going now to 2,000 rand a month. It's a huge gap, and we cannot have that sustainable. And so the private sector has to come to the party. We cannot just rely on government putting out laws all the time. Okay. There has to be a social will from the private sector.
Okay, perhaps if we were to just round up the issue of labor brokers. Have you not met any resistance from the labor brokers themselves?
Immediately when we tabled our proposals at NETLEC, we had a challenge because everybody, particularly the business people, they were saying they don't support.
Why? I mean, this is greed. I mean, people, they get you a job, right? And they charge clients 10,000. And some end up receiving 3.
I think the challenge that we're having as a country is that is the attitude, let me say so, by the employers. Because I think what they need to establish, that's why we have these labor laws that are in front of us that we're administering. We are saying we need to create an environment where everybody will work with honesty and trusting each other.
But I don't think you get that.
But we are saying they must not get profits on the expense of the workers. That's why we are now investigating the modalities of the national minimum wage. Because when we were learning from other countries, I must say, we find that the workers are being paid far better than what is happening in South Africa by the very same companies that are operating in those countries. So those are the things that we are saying. Let the workers, the NGOs and business come up with the proposals on how we are going to deal with the challenges that we are faced with. I just want to make an example, for example, for what happened when we were requesting the information in 2012 from the mining companies.
Yes.
One company decided to give us the categories or levels of the ordinary workers. And then they gave us also the salary for the CEO.
Yes.
And the CEO was earning 854,000 a month, while the ordinary worker who's a rock driller
the CEO was earning how much?
854,000 rands a month.
800.
That person is paid under the currency of a dollar. And when you look at what is happening in our mining companies, they use the dollars when they are selling their product, but when they pay our workers here, they don't use the dollar system. They use rands, except for those who are in the top management. So those are the things that we have to deal with. And that is what is going to also guide us when we are dealing with the issues of national minimum wage.
Are you causing them headaches?
Of course, they will always say that, because immediately when we're saying, let us discuss the issues of the national minimum wage, they have started to say a lot of people are going to lose their jobs, while only ordinary people are going to lose jobs, while the top management is not going to lose jobs. So that is the attitude that I think we have to deal with.
All right. We're going to take a quick break. When we return, Mr. Van Vuuren, I just want us to talk about one thorny issue, child labor, internationally and here in South Africa. This question time, please don't go away.
I was fortunate enough to have that mother to actually do loans and whatever just to make their son, like, you know, very happy.
Tsanele uses his talent and skill as South Africa's first male model living with albinism to best preach messages of acceptance, to educate society about albinism.
If you do not like me for who I am, I mean, you can just jump.
She took it upon herself to attend Abbott's school and be exempted for higher qualifications.
I got my degree when I was 54. In my heart, I felt that I must go on.
Join Puleng Molebatsi on Bupilong every Saturday at 17:30 CAT.
Welcome back. You're still watching Question Time. Our guest today in studio, Minister of Labour, Mayor Mildred Oliphant, and joining us from our PE studios is Vic van Vuuren. Mr. van Vuuren, child labour is an international problem. How is South Africa faring there?
South Africa doesn't have a huge problem for child labour, but we mustn't also be ignorant to think we don't have a challenge. There are areas of our sectors, some sectors that are more suited to having child labour, which is unacceptable to the ILO and also to the South African government. So it's a matter of how we manage and implement our laws to prevent child labour. But South Africa is not one of the world challenged areas when it comes to dealing with child labour problems.
In the SADC region?
In the SADC region, once again, South Africa is one of the better performers in managing child labour. I would say in the African continent, South Africa is most probably one of the best in preventing child labour, in ensuring that children are at school, and when there is an occurrence of child labour, that we have the necessary systems in place to persecute those that advocate it. But at the same time, we mustn't think we've arrived. We've still got some areas we need to deal with, and we need to consistently do a gap analysis to see where we stand.
Okay, the ILO has, as part of your key issues, youth employment, the post-2015 development agenda, and social protection. Just talk to us about that quickly.
Well, I think one of the challenges in the world is that we've got such huge unemployment, 260 million people, a huge part of that is youth, and in South Africa we have that challenge. So what we're looking at is looking at creative ways of trying to get the youth into employment, like entrepreneurship and a small business development. So what we have is a number of programs which we take to the countries that we have offices in, and we try and work with them in increasing the employability of our youth. We look at the education systems, the training systems, and also at how we can look at sustainable business development.
Now, Minister, does the education system in South Africa talk to the labour requirements of the country?
Yes. What we are having now, we do have a training program that is under the Minister of Higher Education and Training. For example, when you talk about skills development on artisans, but at the same time, I must say all departments are working together with higher education, because SETAs are now under higher education. Previously, they were with the Department of Labour. But what we are doing, we are working together with them. For example, we have programs as the Department of Labour under Labour Activation Program. And that program is funded through the Unemployment Insurance and the Compensation Fund, where we are saying let the beneficiaries in particular be supported on that particular program, particularly those who are retrenched. But we said because we do have the higher portfolio, so let us allow also the youth to participate in those programs. For example, we have just finalized the issue of the training of scuba divers through SAMSA and higher education through theatre. They have started now the training, and also will be training about 500 young people as cadets. And we also have a program in partnership with the Public Works and Human Settlement, where we have said we need to train about 3,000 young people on construction. But at the same time, we want to rope in those who were part of the 2010 project, because they have skills in terms of construction. So because we're looking at the backlogs that we have as a country, for example, the rural roads.
Yes.
So we said through the EPWP, we can be able to work together. And we're funding those programs. And at the same time, we also have the partnership with the Department of Energy. They have said to us we will be targeting about 53 municipalities countrywide to install solar heater systems. And that contract is now being finalized, and probably early next year we'll be starting to train young people on those programs.
Okay. Mr. Van Vuuren, the last one for you. As countries develop, as technology develops, it also costs jobs. Is this something that is of concern perhaps to the ILO?
It is. I think this whole concept of jobless growth and through mechanization, it is an issue. But what we've got to make sure is that our education systems continually adapt to what the market needs. I mean, there are many areas that there's a shortage of skills in the world, and those are the areas we need to focus on. I do also believe that we need to be more risk takers in trying to look at programs where we can get youth into the world of work, to give them an opportunity and a taste of the world of work so that it can get them excited. I think we've got some areas we can still explore at the macro level through a social pact with the employers, government and the workers to be adventurous in getting them to work. But yes, technology is going to keep advancing. We need to make sure that our systems are up to date with that so we can generate the skills that are needed in the marketplace.
Okay. Minister, how do you ensure reskilling of workers?
We do have that program. For example, through the compensation fund for those workers who were injured at work, we're looking at that. We're amending the legislation for rehabilitation. And as I've said also, through the unemployment insurance, we are reskilling those who are retrenched so that they can be re-enter labor market. And we are working together with other departments. And I must say also, we do have the support from the ILO, in particular when we were doing those programs of training, including to reskill the public service in particular as well. So we have a good working relations with other countries where we also send our own people to go and learn from them. So I must say, as the government, we are really doing the best that we can do.
Okay. On that note,
thank you very much.
Thank you for the time. Mr. Van Vuuren, thank you very much. That was Question Time for today. A big thank you to my guest and to you for watching the show. Question Time at sabc.co.za is our email address. Our Twitter handle at Question Time 24. From me and the crew, have yourself a wonderful time. Goodbye.